Hi and welcome to the podcast, hosted by myself, Joe, and Doug. We both work at Homestart Glasgow South and we're dad's coordinators. We also run an antenatal workshop, and here to give you a wee bit more information on that is my friend Doug.
Right, so we've been running this workshop for a couple of years now, and essentially it is to help dads prepare to be present for the birth of their children, how they support mum during that, various practical things they need to look at beforehand, but how they get emotionally prepared and what they may or may not experience during the birth. During that workshop, and for the years we've been doing it, we realized there's a real area there's not much being served out there in the podcast world. Maybe books, yes, but there's not much for dads to listen to and to learn a little bit more. So, for example, how does mum recover? What is it she faces? We as dads will never get that. We won't understand it. So as much as our workshop is for dads, the contact time is fairly low and we cover the essentials for the birthing process. This podcast is going to look at a couple of other areas for once babies arrived, and how mums can be better supported by dads, and a lot of things that as dads we just don't know about or we don't want to talk about. So yeah, Joe, this is just to support that, give dads a little bit more to think about and to experience.
Yep, absolutely. And we'll be talking about some harder subjects as well. So we'll cover as much as we can during these podcasts. So we hope you enjoy. We will have some special guests come on, some professionals, and give some expertise to us dads who don't actually know what to expect.
So, Joe, who do we have as a guest today?
Thanks, Doug. We do have a guest today, and it's Wendy Macleod, and she's from She Restores. She is a specialist in pre- and postnatal rehab coaching.
So, Wendy, welcome to our podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me.
It's great to have you here. We would like you to introduce yourself. We're not going to speak for you. Who are you and what do you do?
So, I'm Wendy Macleod, and I have my own wellbeing company for women called She Restores. So I've been in the fitness industry for 25 years. It's been a long time. And 14 working with mums. And for the last 6, I have specialised in kind of core pelvic floor rehab. For mums, I also have 2 children of my own. So I know exactly how mums feel and hopefully can give some input for the dads too. My kids are now 13 and 14, so they're not babies anymore.
Great. Yeah,
that's
well,
cool,
welcome.
Man.
It's great to have you along.
Thank you.
I think Joe and I have agreed on this, that we have zero understanding of what it's like, being men, to recover from birth. Yeah. Both our partners have given birth and we've observed, obviously. But we, as men, will just never really know what it's like. And part of the antenatal workshop that we deliver, we do touch very briefly on the recovery, but we're painfully aware that we have zero knowledge. And that's why we would love to hear from you today about various strategies, things women can expect, and also importantly, what partners can expect, and maybe even a do's and don'ts. I don't know. I think, Joe, we both know certain things you don't say or don't do.
I know some don'ts.
We know
definitely
more don'ts than do's. So, So I think one of the things we stress with our workshop is there's no such thing as normal. Yeah. And I'm guessing it's the same for yourself. So what are your thoughts on normal recovery or whatever is expected?
Yeah, just as you say, there's absolutely nothing, like no 2 deliveries are completely identical. And that's the thing that always amazes me, because, the mums obviously become pregnant, they deliver their baby, but every single story that I hear, and I've literally worked with probably close to 3,000 mums in my career. Wow. And I've heard all those amazing different stories and experiences. And I think the thing that's important to remember is everyone's learning. Like mum's learning too. It's new to her.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
also it's new to the dad as well. So everybody's on this kind of learning journey and trying to navigate all the changes, all the emotions, all the physical changes, the mental emotions and feelings.
Some of the things we hear back is some dads think that mums have automatically got a natural bond with their kid. They've already, or you know how to be a mum already before they've done anything. Yeah. And that's not true at all. You know, they still need to learn. They don't, completely. You know, you don't know how to breastfeed or how to change or, you know, all these different things that guys sometimes just assume because you're a female, because you carry the baby, you automatically know. Guys say, oh, I need to learn how to be a dad. Mum also needs to learn how to be a mum.
Absolutely does.
And I think along those lines, we probably assume, and again, we've not polled dads about this, but we probably assume, well, obviously it's the female that gives birth, and so the body's made for giving birth, and then there's almost this normal natural recovery period. The body must have that as well. Yeah. But of course, as we both realise, and many men and hopefully most partners have realised, that's not the case at all. It's quite it's a learning process, and I think, as we mentioned a bit earlier, we think there's still a bit of a stigma around it, and not just amongst men discussing this, but amongst women too. Yeah,
totally. I think what you were saying, Joe, is really interesting about the dad maybe perceiving that the mum knows what she's doing just because she's a woman. And I remember feeling like, you know, I was going to be this earth mother and I was going to breastfeed and I wasn't even going to buy any formula or anything like that. Yeah. And we had such huge issues with feeding. And it was just such a kind of, I wasn't prepared for that at all.
And it's quite hard hitting that, isn't it? It's quite, you know, because this happened to us as well. Well, us... my partner, so
sorry, who did that happen to?
Yeah, I know. I need to refer. I keep saying it, it's her. So we had problems breastfeeding. We tried and we wanted to, and we had no plan on using formula milk. Yeah. And it was quite upsetting. You know, for 2 days we tried, and I was sitting there like, what can I do? I'm so useless right now. You know, we had the midwives in, we had the nurses in. Yeah. No one could get this to work. And then my partner started feeling really upset with herself. Why can't I feed my baby?
Totally get that.
And one of the midwives just says, look, it's not a big deal. Just feed your baby, go and get formula. Yeah. And that was the first time I felt that I could help, because I walked to the shop and I bought a pack of milk, and I came back and I was like, oh, I've got a solution here. Yes. And that was it. And it was something so little like that, but
in that moment that would have been really big for,
that was the only thing I had,
and for her,
you know. But the important thing was feed your baby. You know. And like we say at the antenatal groups is, okay, you can plan, but most plans will go out the window, and don't be set in stone. Don't think, oh, this can't be amended, this can't be changed. You know, we wrote on a bit of paper, this needs to stick. So, and it is quite upsetting for everybody involved. I remember the overwhelming emotion of feeling so massive. Low at that point.
How are mums feeling? Because we have an idea, and we I think through social media and through society, we see there's always this push to get body back to what it should be, quote unquote.
No, definitely.
What is it you're finding? Are mums coming to you with this idea and, I need to be bikini ready in 6 weeks' time? What is your advice? What do you take them through? Yeah,
so I think at the start of my work with mums 14 years ago, it was definitely about getting your body back. A bit of a term that I now hate. You know, the focus was more on losing the weight. Nobody was really talking about what your pelvic floor is doing, or if you were leaking, or peeing yourself in certain situations.
Yeah, so it was more of a cosmetic kind of outlook on it, rather than a practical, healthier version of yourself.
Functional kind of like, let's look at what your body's just done. Let's look at the physiological impact that's had, and what we maybe need to do so that you can just feel supported in your own body, able to get through the day as a mum, be able to lift your children, you know, pain-free, to not feel like you're too scared to leave the house in case you might actually wet yourself. Like that's seriously an issue for a lot of women, and it's talked about a lot more now, thankfully. And certainly in the space that I am in, more of the kind of restorative healing, nurturing your body in that way, and not the focus being on getting back to HIIT class or getting back to spin and losing the weight. Those things can come at a later date, but let's acknowledge what your body's done and been through, and it has different needs post-birth than it does, when you would have been exercising before, or how you're going to be exercising in the future.
So the exercises that you do with mums that have just gave birth within a few weeks, how do they differ from what you would do before you had a baby?
So a lot of the time I'm starting with breath work, and it doesn't sound like much, but that can be very, very big and very impactful in the postnatal period, even very, very early on, like 2 or 3 weeks postnatal, because your breathing mechanics are all thrown out when you're growing a baby. There's pressure on the diaphragm, there's, that leads to a switch off in the core and the pelvic floor muscles. So all of that's changed, your breathing mechanics completely change. So it's kind of looking at, how are they working, how we can get those back. So breath work, diaphragmatic breathing is sort of a starting point for me, and mobility work as well, because the huge postural changes that happen in pregnancy can cause a lot of pain. The pelvis can be out of alignment, lots of back pain. Some muscles have stretched and got longer and weaker, and other muscles have got really short and stuck and fixed in certain positions to manage that posture. So it's all about kind of rebalancing all of that post-birth.
Is there because we are aware of the various procedures that mums sometimes have to go through with birth. So we cover a section in our antenatal where we discuss episiotomies, bilateral episiotomies, obviously C-sections, crash sections as well. I'm guessing there's obviously very different recovery processes for that. And of those, is there one that's maybe more particularly difficult than others?
I would say, again, it depends on the individual, because everyone heals at a different rate as well, and that's not the fault or anything to do with the mum. It's just how their body might be working or responding to what's happened. There's also this kind of misconception as well, where you get your 6-week check, or maybe not these days, but often there would have been a 6-week check, and then it was like, right, yes, you're fine. And people take that as a sort of green light to go back and do what they were doing before they had their baby in terms of exercise, and that's not always the case. Because if there is healing going on, or there's a bit of an infection maybe has happened, and the healing slowed down a wee bit with C-sections, even episiotomies, then that mum might take longer than 6 weeks or 12 weeks.
Yeah. And she might not have had the same rest period as other mums as well,
Exactly.
Whether it be, maybe a mum who's a single mum with other kids, who she doesn't get really time to rest and heal, as compared to a first-time mum who has got maybe family members and a partner helping her out, so she can rest more. So the 6-week kind of doesn't really fit.
Quite misleading in a way.
Yeah, it's like one size fits all, but it's absolutely not the case.
Yeah.
Just, you get any maybe advice on how partners could support mum during these first few weeks and months of the healing process?
Feed her.
Feed her. Yeah. I think that's always a winner, isn't it?
Be mine. Yeah. I just remember my husband because I found it hard during the day as a new mum. I would sometimes get to about 2 o'clock and think, I feel really faint. Why am I feeling so faint? Oh no, when did I last eat? And you're just so on automatic pilot, changing, feeding, that you sometimes forget to properly hydrate and eat. And he would sort of do the evening meal, and it was I just remember this plate of food was literally probably not very attractive the way I ate it, but it was just hoovered up. And that one thing was just, honestly, it's like the little things that make a big impact in those early stages. It's just your basic needs. Need met.
It's sort of from an emotional point of view. I think one of the things we also discuss at the workshop is, we say during the birth process, especially if you're a Mr. Fix-It type, you probably haven't seen your partner in that sort of pain before. Yeah. You want to make it better. There's probably some feelings of guilt that this is partially your fault. and you've got a person who is really struggling. What would you say to those partners who probably are wise enough to know not to say, or they know not to say certain things, but what emotional support could partners give, and how would maybe they temper themselves as well in terms of unsolicited advice, which will earn them a night on the sofa?
Yeah, I think sometimes it is just doing things around the house or a big help and support. Just really being open and honest and asking, your partner, what do you need? Is there a way I can help? Right now. I think it's just having that kind of communication there and feeling that you're, the mum feeling like she's really been seen and heard as well. Having that, just holding space for her to express how she's feeling. And letting her know that it's okay to feel like that as well. Because sometimes you kind of, as a mum, you feel like you have to look like you're coping and, just do all the things, and you don't always want to open up to even your husband. I remember feeling like that, because then it might look like I'm not being a good mum. So I think it's, if there's some way that conversation can happen, it's really powerful.
I think there's and I'm always cautious to draw a similarity for dads, because I think we're very aware we've not gone through this process. But I think dads sometimes feel, well, I just need to keep quiet about what I've experienced. I'm just the dad. I'm not the one who actually gave birth.
I get that.
And so we always very carefully want to balance that, because we definitely not trying to switch the argument or the focus to dads, it's all about us, definitely not. But some dads have experienced something and they don't know how to process that, and that tendency to, I'm not talking about this to anyone. Joe?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Sometimes dads do just keep quiet, and especially when, the whole time during the pregnancy, most times no one's actually asked them how they are feeling anyway. I've been to umpteen appointments, and my partner was asked, how are you, how are you keeping, and I was asked to leave the room, and for the one-on-one session, but no one took me aside and said, how are you coping, how are you feeling, and I was fine, I was in a good place. I was pretty much ready to be a dad by that point. But many dads aren't. Many dads have got a lot of worries and concerns. Will I be able to be a good dad? So many different things. Worrying about finances and worrying about just taking care of your partner and everything that comes with it. But no one asked me at all. I remember after my kid was born, I asked a question, and they were like, "Oh, we're not speaking to you. We're speaking to mum." Wow. So I was kind of left out again. So I totally get that dads bottle it up and keep it in, and especially when their dads never spoke about emotion. Never spoke about feelings. You were always taught as a wee boy, man up, suck it in. You're a man, be a man, blah blah blah. Bottling it up, keeping it in. But it's good to share with your partner. And if they're sharing with you, share back.
Absolutely.
Don't feel guilty about your worries and concerns about being a dad. And it will help if you get your worries and concerns out. It will, they say is a problem shared as a problem halved. So
definitely,
I totally agree with that. I totally think that's right.
Absolutely, and I really think that dads should be able to share their vulnerability as well, and just be open about that.
Yeah, it can be quite scary, because I was 29 when I had found out that I was going to be a dad. And my first thought was, oh my god, I'm too young to be a dad at 29. And considering I come from where I come from, there was people who was nearly grandas but at that age, so I was like, personally I was, oh no, I'm too young, but who do I speak to about these concerns? No one really. It took me quite a while to manage my emotions and feelings and be alright with them. But
do you ever find that mums are Have they ever confided in you saying, I couldn't tell my partner, I don't either want to stress him, I don't want to share what I'm feeling. Is there that experience where mums are just cautious or
definitely.
careful?
I mean, I know myself, it was never diagnosed, but I know I had postnatal depression with my first, and I just didn't really know what was wrong with me. Basically, I couldn't work it out. I just I don't feel right, I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling really low, and I thought, is it just sleep deprivation, all the rest of it. So I was just having all those thoughts, and it was about 5 months postnatal that I told my husband
Right.
how I felt. So, I guess there was that element of, I don't want to admit to this, for whatever reason. So I think mums maybe do keep things, we tend to carry quite a lot ourselves. Definitely. We all do in different ways. But yeah, I think there probably is that. You kind of want to just make it look like everything's working okay.
Right. Yeah,
to your
managing
husband.
your expectations
Yeah.
of being a mum and being a dad, and then, maybe something's not went right and your expectations aren't quite being met.
Yeah. That's it.
And then it kind of snowballs, doesn't it? And before you know it, you're worrying about a little thing, it becomes a bigger thing, and then 5 months is quite a long time to be suffering in a sense on your own, without speaking to anybody and realising this I could get help here, and how did you get on with that? Where did you go from there?
I actually never I'd approached the GP a couple of times, and I don't think they really thought I was, but I definitely was, because it went on for quite a while. But I just managed it through actually setting up my business. It was a really good distraction for me, and just getting out and about as much as I could every single day. I made it a mission that I had to go and do at least one activity with my son.
And is that where your business idea came from?
Not necessarily. I actually came across Buggy Fit originally when I was, before I'd actually given birth. So I'd started kind of planning it then. But yeah, it just so happened that it kind of came at the right time. So so it was a huge kind of crutch.
It's interesting. I think we often, because we don't know what we don't know, and if you're in that period, you're thinking, could it be this, could it be that? And I think where a lot of people find frustration is because you haven't experienced it, you can't say for sure. And I don't know, I think there is a tendency, some people it's the opposite way, but there's a tendency for us not to want to just sort of go, oh well, I'm experiencing A, B or C.
Definitely.
Because I know I can, oh, my finger's sore, oh, there's the next thing. And then when it comes to these things, we kind of don't want to just we're kind of open to understanding, okay, maybe I am suffering from postnatal depression, but because we've not, and for mums who've not experienced it, it's a new territory, which and they don't want to be the complaining, like, oh well, I'm having this and I'm having that.
That's it.
And yet this could well be. I mean, I think it's 1 in 7 mums experience PND, and I think in England it's 1 in 6. For dads, we sort of think about calling it paternal depression, because I think postnatal depression is not quite a term, even though it is used for men. But paternal depression is 1 in 10. So it's, but there is this thing of I must just be strong, and I think mums too.
Yes, and I think there's a lot of guilt comes with it as well, because you think, like, on paper, like, everything's perfect. Like, I've got my beautiful, healthy baby that some people don't sadly get. I'm fortunate. I'm with my husband who's been supportive. Everything on paper is perfect. And yet you're just having these strange feelings and moods and emotions, and you can't really quite explain why. So I think that's partly why a lot of it maybe does go like undiagnosed or unrecognised.
I think so.
So,
and I think sometimes it's also, where do you go for help? Like you say, you spoke about going to the doctors, and the doctors are probably, in my experience, they obviously have to push the patient a little bit just to see, is it not just something else? And you kind of get that, but I think something so, especially around when it impacts mental health, it's really hard to then push it yourself, because it just kind of feeds on itself. Like, okay, no one's going to believe this, so I might as well not share. I'll just figure it out myself.
Yeah.
And even though we're in an era where you can go online, you can at least start your journey there, you can learn a little bit. There's also a lot online that you've got to be very careful about. Yeah. But you can start at least the process and find a group, find someone to speak to. Yeah. I think that's key. But we're encouraging dads to, sort of, men have been on this journey in terms of mental health, and now you've got huge stars talking about their mental health. Yes. And I can see why some men are quite cautious in not talking about it. And I think they have a certain expectation or what it will mean for them, or they'll be labelled or something like that. And as we've seen that becoming a better scenario, men are happier to talk about it. But I think, for mums, there's still that. It's like you said, it's about, I've got to be a mum now. Yes, and the mum, and we know mums are up there. Mums are a mum. I mean, you don't even need to explain it. And like we often say to our dads, when you leave the hospital and mum's in that open ward, she's just been through this incredible experience, a tough experience, and right now you've got to start being a mum with zero life experience of that.
Absolutely, it is. I think it's just such a big life change. Like nothing prepares you for it really at all. It just your life kind of changes overnight, and it doesn't look anything like it did before.
Yeah, it's completely changed, and
like when you're in that, and you're also sleep deprived, and it's just, and your hormones are still not quite.
Yeah, my oldest is 8, and my missus said she's not had a night's sleep in 8 years. And I've got good sleepers, my girls sleep well, so you never really go back to that kind of relaxed way you were before you had kids ever. Not really.
You're always thinking about them and what they need and what the research is that you need to do to make sure you're being a good enough mum, or you're fulfilling all the needs and making sure they develop in the right way. And
it's I think it is. I've often said to my wife, I don't understand what it is mums go through. I mean, I think my poor mum, who had to, because I'm like, well, I'm just going to go. She would always like, phone when you're going to be late, and I'm like, I'll be fine, And there's that kind of, why do you worry? And now, as a parent myself, and I can see my wife in terms of our children, I see how she has real concern for them. I'm not letting them run around with a chainsaw or anything, but I'm sort of like, let them do this, let them do that. But I didn't carry them. I didn't give birth to them, and it's a phenomenal bond to observe, and I think that's where I don't know. I think I even sometimes feel a little bit jealous that there is this phenomenal maternal bond. I know that doesn't always happen, but it is something we look in on it, and we're in awe of that process that's unfolding with moms and their children. So.
It's pretty special.
It is. It's really we try and encourage dads to enter into this feeling, because this is not a thing to avoid. It's like embrace it. Actually, this is part of how you become who you are.
Into it, and dads can have that same special bond as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, because we encourage talking to the baby, singing to the baby, tickling the tummy before baby's born.
Definitely.
And we've noticed that even when you're doing that, singing or even talking to the baby, when the baby's born and you do the same song, they recognise you instantly. They recognise the voice right away. And that happened to me. It was amazing. And I was really like, wow, like she knows who I am. And that was the first real connection that we had at that moment. And it was so we encouraged that. I know some dads are, I'm not talking to a baby, I'm not talking to a tummy. This do it, it'll help. You help you bond with the baby, it'll help the baby bond with you. And it's the start of mum's got the baby inside. you'll never get that, but it's the closest you're going to get.
Yeah.
And we were actually talking about this earlier, when some dads don't really know when it's real, because it's just an idea, and it's just an idea of, I'm going to be a dad, but you don't really see anything. And then with ultrasounds, you've got an image there, and then you've got 4D scans now, 3-dimensional live pictures, and then it's really like, wow, like, that's amazing that you can see that. And up until these points, some dads don't really it doesn't really sink in. So the majority of dads say after they've seen the ultrasounds or after they've done the 4D scans, they're like, that's when I knew it was real, that's when I knew it was, even though your missus telling you I'm pregnant and there's a tummy growing and everything else, and you're like, it's just an idea, it's just a concept, but then that's when it sits with them, that it's actually happening. And dads sometimes get quite, that I've spoke to, get quite emotional at that point in time as well. So it's quite good.
And I think mums have that head start. And so we do say to dads, well, maybe at the birth, you're not sure what your emotions are. And you see mum and baby, and you're not spare, you're not extra, but you realise there's been this bond formed already. And I think some dads, they can struggle with that. But it's still a process where, the dads can participate.
Absolutely.
Joe, have I missed anything out? We were talking about what we were going to ask Wendy. What have we missed anything? Have you got anything?
I think you've covered all the things we want to cover. Is there anything you want to cover? Anything you want to bring up? Any resources that you want to point people towards that you might find it's quite useful?
Maybe from the mental health side, Pandas are a great charity.
Yes.
I've met the girls. Well, we actually met on video call during lockdown, and we did an interview. They're great. Like, I feel like 14 years ago when I had my son, there wasn't just quite the same awareness about that side of things, whereas now obviously we've got much more online kind of activity. So they're definitely somebody that I would recommend to reach out to if mum or dad is maybe feeling, because they support both parents if they're struggling a bit. Just knowing that, there's nothing wrong with asking for help. Whether that's so you can go for a sleep or go for a walk on your own, or whether it's your mental health.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think as well, just going back there to what you were saying about dads struggling to feel that connection or that bond initially, like post-birth, is like that kind of 4th trimester time is a brilliant time for dads to do that, because they can really be hands-on and take the baby if mum is needing a bit of a rest, and that's then a nice chance for dad to bond with the baby as well and just get those cuddles and all of that.
Great. And of course, a resource that we'd like people to know about is your work, your business. So if you can tell them how to access that or where to find you.
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram, sherestores_, or just sherestores.com online.
Excellent.
And it's all from my home studio in Giffnock or online, one-to-one or small groups.
Great.
For rehab, restoring the core, the pelvic floor, or even just general fitness with a postnatal angle and guiding women back safely, really, to where they want to be.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. It's been great to have you here.
Thank you for having me. It's been great, and I think just well done in your work as well. It's fantastic what you're doing.
Thank you. We do enjoy it, and it gives us an opportunity to have someone like yourself in, and we can really enjoy learning about things, especially things we have nothing about. It's really good to have someone to inform us and guide us. So we hope everyone has found Wendy's advice helpful. We do encourage both mums and dads, if you're struggling with issues, speak to someone, don't suffer in silence. Thank you again for coming out, Wendy.
Very welcome, thank
and
you.
You'll see the details to contact Wendy, sherestores.com, and on Instagram, sherestores_. So Joe, thank you. That's been great. I think we've learned a lot today. Any last thoughts from yourself?
Until next time.
See you guys around.